Why, hello. Welcome back. We're going to be talking about Code Veronica, or I should say, Resident Evil Veronica. Now, Code Veronica is a game that I had some problems with before I started delving back into it. Now, a lot of the a lot of the memories as to why I hate it, yeah, they came back in full force. Let's just say hunters. I hate hunters. All right, first and foremost, I hate hunters. There are no other enemies that I hate more than hunters in this game franchise. So with that being said, let's talk about Resident Evil Veronica, the remake version. So one thing I do want to kind of address here is I'm just talking about my own opinions of what I would like to see in the upcoming remake for Code Veronica. And to kind of help me with figuring that out, I went back and played Code Veronica because, that's kind of what I've done. That's what I've been doing for a lot of these other past Resident Evil remake games is kind of go back to the original title and play through them a little bit. I did it with Resident Evil 2, which, you know, there's not much to like talk about since there's a lot of things I loved about it. Resident Evil 4, which was, I was a little hesitant about it. I'm not going to lie about Resident Evil 4 Remake because I thought, Code Veronica could use it better, But, now that we gotten here, let's talk a lot about what needs to change first and foremost. So, the first thing, and I think this is something that everyone agrees on, the weird way that Code Veronica works is that you play as Claire for the first half of the game. Then once you get to the Antarctic base, then you will switch over from Claire as soon as you face the Nosferatu fight. You fight Nosferatu, and then you'd switch over to Chris, which is kind of a weird thing to do on players, honestly. And something that is very awkward about it is that Chris can get all of what Claire has if she puts everything in the box beforehand. He gets all of those items. And I think this is something that's really, really needs to be changed because if you don't put anything in the box, you're actually going to softlock yourself, especially the Tyrant fight too. You can softlock yourself at the Tyrant fight. You can softlock yourself after the Tyrant fight. It's so weird. This game is very awkward with its item management that I do think that needs to be addressed really, really heavily so in the remake. Because if you don't have enough bullets to take out the tentacles when Chris gets to the Antarctic base, you can't progress. You will die because you can't get close enough to knife it, and you just can't do anything. So really, stuff like that needs to be addressed in the remake, and I'm pretty sure these devs, because I do remember hearing about them going back and playing the Resident Evil games that they're going to remake, and playing back to jot down notes to figure out, which one or, how their experience was, and then figure out what kind of things they could improve on. So I do believe this is something that they're going to address wholeheartedly. But let's go a little bit about the second one. And I think this is another one. This is my personal gripe, honestly, with Code Veronica. The insane backtracking. Because you go from... Okay, so let's go through the progress that you initially go through. So you go from the prison where you start the game. You go to the castle. Then you go to the underwater lab. Then you go to the training facility. Then you go back to the castle. Then you go to the castle Ashford Estate, which is part of the castle, but a different section of the castle, right? Or it's the palace and then the castle. Whatever one it is. I don't know. They're both something, right? The Ashford Estate. Then you go there. Then you have to backtrack from there all the way back to, I believe, the trading facility, and then going back from the trading facility all the way to the palace one last time to get something, and then going to the palace all the way to the prison. You go to the prison, and then you go to the underwater. No, you go to the castle again, and then you go to the underwater section. Basically, what I just said was a lot of jargon for saying you go here, 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 back here, back here, back here, back here. And that's kind of how it progresses, which is very tedious, honestly. And this is kind of my gripe, right? Obviously, a lot of other people have different views on this. Some people don't view it as, backtracking, like, well, you backtrack in every other Resident Evil game. What's so different here? It's like, you don't go through all this backtracking, man. Like, when I compare the backtracking in Resident Evil 2 to Resident Evil Code Veronica, the backtracking in Resident Evil 2 is really not as big as in Code Veronica. So this is my personal gripe, obviously. So I do hope that they I don't want them to make exploration horrible, which is something that they did pretty well in the Remake 4, Resident Evil 4 Remake. So I do really think they do a pretty good job of trying to allow you to explore things. I do hope they keep that, though. Another thing that they need to change, obviously, is something that a lot of people are going to bring up, is the character Steve. Now, Steve is someone that, I'm not going to lie, when I was playing through this game back, I was not listening to anything. I was not listening to anything at all. All I knew was that he said father, and he was crying, and he was dying, and that's it. That's all I know about Steve. I completely forgoed anything about the character. So obviously they're going to have to really interject some more human emotion into him than just whining and crying and dying. So, Steve is someone that you do play as. You do play as him for a small section. So I do hope they expand that a little bit more. Because, I mean, come on, dude. You're playing with dual Uzis. Come on. Allow us to have a little bit more fun than that, So hopefully they do that. And speaking of expansions, we need to make sure that the prison, because I do think the prison is something that could be one of the best settings in Resident Evil. Honestly, all the settings in Code Veronica are not too bad. I really do like the Antarctic base when it comes to the setting. A cold, dark place. And I do hope that they do very well with the lighting. And, because something I alluded to in a previous recording, I haven't posted it yet, but I probably will someday, is talking about Code Veronica and the frozen kind of wasteland that it is in Veronica's the laboratory, the Antarctic base. That is a pretty good setting for zombies. So I do hope they do work on that whole ice aesthetic and make sure it's not too glaring, but especially with the flashlights, shining back and whatnot. But hopefully they do a pretty good job of it. Another thing that I hope, now this is something that I'm gonna get a little bit in, just a little bit of my own opinion. I do hope that the gameplay for Code Veronica isn't just a one-to-one to Resident Evil 2 Remake. Now, I know this is going to be a very divisive kind of thing for, a lot of players. But I do hope they evolve something, some game mechanic that they evolve in this game. Because Resident Evil 2 evolved Resident Evil 2 original to Resident Evil 2 remakes, subcategories, right? They had that from Resident Evil 1 Remake, where you had the flash grenade, you had the knife, and then you had the grenade for Chris, and then you had a stun gun for Jill. But In Resident Evil 2 Remake, they made sure that everyone had, flash, knife, and grenade. So I kind of hope that they evolve something with this, or evolve something with subcategories to maybe have in your left hand where you can actively use it. Now, you got to remember, Code Veronica original had dual wielded items, which was the very first time in the entire series to have dual wielding, and you could actually dual target it, multiple zombies. So maybe they can do something like that where they evolve something, because I do hope that they do something to evolve the gameplay to allow mastery. Because when you look at Resident Evil 4 Remake, they added a parry system that it what is the word? It incites you to be masterful with the parry, which, because I've been playing a lot of Resident Evil 4 Remake lately, I've been getting very good at the parry system. And it's something that is both satisfying and it's really disheartening when you miss it. So it forces you to get better. It kind of helps, motivate you. Uh-oh. I am the storm that is approaching. So I do hope that they evolve something in the game. That's all I'm asking, is something that makes it so that the game's fun, but also worth replaying. Because Resident Evil 2 Remake does have a little bit of a replay value lost when both scenarios are the same, which is it's a valid criticism of Resident Evil 2 Remake. But me personally, I'm okay with it, because Resident Evil 2 Remake was kind of like my dream remake, because I liked the setting of Resident Evil 2 and bringing in the mechanics of Resident Evil 4 original and kind of marrying those two together was kind of like my dream game for the Resident Evil franchise, and they did it. And so I'm like ecstatic for that. Okay, so I'm a little biased on that. But Resident Evil 4 Remake has a completely higher tier of replayability compared to Resident Evil 2 Remake. And I do think that giving players something to master in a game that's horror based is a very interesting take. But if you can do it in a way where there is something skillful about Resident Evil Veronica, I think I believe this can actually help replayability, because I do hope there's more replayability than just the battle game mode. I didn't play it. To be fair, I haven't played that for 10 years, and I don't really care about playing it again. So, anyways, next on the agenda here, let's talk about music. And this is a valid criticism for Resident Evil 2 Remake, and we're going to go back to this a lot because, it's valid. In Resident Evil 2 Remake, the ambience and the sound and the music was deliberate to the point where it was a little too mute. Obviously, the developers wanted to, they wanted to really go and focus in on the horror aspect of Resident Evil 2 Remake, and they did a phenomenal job. But I think there was a lot of music lost in Resident Evil 2 Remake, and the music is actually decent. Like, it's really good. Like, the save music for the Resident Evil 2 Remake is really good. And obviously one of my favorite soundtracks is, the Tofu one. That is one of my favorite ones. It's a really good brain. The Tofu one is a really good banger, honestly. I love the metal and the shredding of the guitar, dude. But I do hope that they bring the music to something that is, to life. There could be, solemn moments, right? Where it's like, silent. But I do hope that they bring in music after those silent moments, because I think that was what was lost in Resident Evil 2 Remake, and I do hope that they don't really go into it all the way as they did with the Resident Evil 2 Remake, because they're going to focus on the horror aspect of Resident Evil Veronica. They have said this before. So, obviously, I do hope music is still going to be in there, because Veronica does have one of the best save room themes in the entire franchise. Let's be honest, okay? And the last thing that I do hope that they change up is the enemy fights, okay? I'm going to be real with you. This fight here, this larva, this what is this thing anyways? I didn't read it because I was playing through it, and I wasn't going to waste time reading through something that, it was going to waste a little bit of memory, okay? Whatever this thing is, okay? When it grew to an adult into this thing, and you go as Chris to try and get this metal plate, what the hell, dude? Why do I have to... Whatever. This fight, by the way, sucks, okay? I was stuck here for like 30 minutes, it felt like. Just, I don't know what I was doing. That's all I knew. What I was doing. Like, whatever I was doing was wrong, obviously. So, I hate this section, okay? Now, the other fights, like the Nosferatu fight, is interesting. The developers already said there are no first-person shooter elements in the game whatsoever. So this section here, this Nosferatu sniper fight, ain't happening, bro. And thankfully, this linear launcher, Alexia thing, that's not here in the game either, which I'm glad, because I hated that fucking... Whatever. I hate that thing, okay? So, there's not going to be any first-person shooter elements in this game. So, the question now remains, well, how are you going to do the Nosferatu fight? Are we going to battle the spider? Huh. I think that would be an interesting kind of fight. I think it would be a fun fight if you do it well enough. It could be like the fight with the huge tarantula in Raccoon City with with Leon. God. Sorry, I'm bad with names, okay? I just suck with names, alright? Anyways, getting back to the enemy fights. The Tyrant fight. Jesus Christ, man. We're bad with names here. We're bad with names here, okay? But it's alright. The Tyrant fight. I don't know. That one needs to be changed up a little bit, because all you do is just stand back, shoot him with grenades, and then, that's it. Literally, you just knock the storage thing onto him and he falls off. That's literally it. What else is there? Like, what else does... Obviously, the Alexia fight needs to change. The second one, the one where she's like a cocoon or whatever, that one sucks. That one's just trash. I hate that. That fight sucks. So, that one needs to change. The Steve fight is also kind of annoying, but, it's not even a fight. It's a runaway. You don't actually fight Steve. You just run away from him. So, it is what it is. I think that is something that needs to be changed up a bit. What else needs to be changed? Honestly, I just wrote down, certain notes here and there about what I wanted to see changed. But after that, I don't know exactly what my hope is, really. I just hope it's a good game. Really. I just hope it's a good game. So anyways, I think that's going to be doing it for this video, hopefully the next video that I get out, you know, I can actually get it out. So I'll see you in the next one. Later.